So I'm Tim Mazer, and I'm your Uber judge. Are you a judge?
I'm an AI judge.
Okay.
So I can introduce myself.
Okay. So we have 3 real judges. 2 of them are online, and I'll invite all 4 of my colleague judges to introduce themselves in a moment. As you heard Maria say, she's a special judge because you are part of the AI track. I'm a special judge, the Uber judge. Just the actual votes that go in to see if you win or not will come from the real 3 judges. I serve as kind of a moderator, and I'm here to back up in case something happens to our virtual judges. So we're going to briefly introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to read a script that we read, and then after I read that script, we'll turn on the clock, and we will all be playing. You're going to start off telling us who you are, who we are, and then at that moment, I press the button, and we all are in character. So, Tim Mazer, yeah.
So I know that there's going to be a 5-minute grace period. Are we notified of that?
Nope.
Or, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. We used to have little clocks that we put on this table so you could see, but we don't anymore. Let's see. I live here in the Boston area. I've worked in business ethics for 36 years now. Just before you were born, which is awful. And I work in business ethics at the Broad Institute for MIT and Harvard, which is based here in Cambridge. We are the organization that mapped the human genome. So if any of you would like to do that, I get an employee discount. Yeah. Let's see, Caitlin.
Yes, so I'm Caitlin Toby. I work at Medtronic, which is a medical device company based out of Minnesota in their data and privacy center of expertise. I have about 10 years of compliance ethics and legal experience.
Hi, my name is Maria Sonnen. As Tim mentioned, I'm not one of the judges that is going to determine how you rank overall. I'm in your group. I'm a judge that's going to rank you in the AI category, and I believe there is a special prize for whoever wins the AI category as well. So that's why I'm here. I am in the ethics and business conduct function of BAE Systems. We are a defense and aerospace company with about 45,000 employees here in the US. And I live in New Hampshire.
And Hannah?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Very proud of all of you students for being here. So I had actually taught ethics at UMass Amherst for over 10 years. And I have my BBA and MBA from there, but I'm also a licensed attorney, and I do a lot of consulting work for student entrepreneurs especially. And I primarily teach business law now, but I've taught business and legal courses and ethics courses for over 10 years. So I really enjoy working with students, and I'm excited to see what you all have to share with us today. Thank you.
And Rachel.
Hi, thank you, Tim. Good to see everybody again. My name is Rachel Frazier, and I teach ethics and professionalism at the University of Florida in the College of Engineering. My background, though, is innovation and entrepreneurship, and my passion is leading teams, helping people understand the importance of integrity while maintaining a culture of innovation and starting your own ventures. So thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. Wow, this is impressive. Hannah, having taught at UMass Amherst, the team that's presenting is UMass Amherst. This is what we in the business call a apparent conflict of interest, but we did a background check on Hannah, and she promised that she was definitely going to mark you badly so that it's she was supporting you for the wrong reasons. Okay, so I'm going to read my script. In this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who we are before you begin. You'll have up to 25 minutes with a 5-minute cushion. So up to 30 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem, and then to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During this time, you will be uninterrupted. When you're finished with your presentation, the judges will remain in character and ask you questions for 20 minutes. So as a reminder, during the Q&A, both you and the judges stay in character. After the Q&A is over, we have 10 minutes for the judges. At that point, we all stop being in character and the judges give you candid feedback. Some important things to keep in mind: the ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. However, these should be described in a simple, practical, common sense fashion, using technical, philosophical terminology, or basing your argument on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. During your presentation, every member of the team must have some sort of speaking role. And the final thing I'll say is we have a team coming in at 11:45, which is 65 minutes from now. So we're good on time. So just do what you were going to do, but with all due respect, when you're done, I'm going to kick you out quickly and violently. Okay. Go ahead and let us know who you are, who we are, and then start.
So we are the Eisenberg Innovation Consultants, and we'll be talking to the leadership, executive leadership of Gap Inc., the clothing company, retail company. And that includes various CEOs from the various different brands that they have, as well as the CEO of Gap Inc., which is Richard Dixon. And then just to clarify, you said it was 20 minutes with a 5-minute grace period
No.
or 25?
You have up to 25. It's okay if you stop at 20, but you have up to 25. You have up to 30. So effectively come in between 20 and 30, but don't go over 30.
Thank you. And then, all set?
Yeah.
Okay. So, good morning. We're really excited to be able to jump into our proposition for how AI and scheduling can be included for Gap Inc. So, to talk a little bit about our team, my name is Paula Maris.
I'm Mihir Gokri.
I'm Sophia Roselli. And I'm Anna Tonelli.
And so we're really excited to be able to jump in and talk to the executive leadership team today of Gap Inc., of course, particularly Richard Dixon, excuse me. And so obviously, why are we here? Well, we're here to talk about how you can harness the power of AI to both increase efficiencies while also enhance employee flourishing.
Now, in order to tackle this ethical question, we went back to your mission and your values, a fit for all. And most importantly, I want to draw your attention to the fact of a commitment to do more, as that's what we're here to do today.
Yes, and so we took into consideration the stakeholders as well as play a big role into this. Particularly, we really want to focus on your employees, which we feel are at the center, and you have also expressed that they are at the center as well. Now, here's your agenda, which does seem a little bit daunting. However, we want you to just keep in mind that these are more key points that we want you to take with you, and we'll flow through it. So we'll end up concluding with our tiered recommendations as our main event. So let's talk about our ethical focus on flourishing, right? Now, recently you demonstrated or sent out the statement of your 2025 commitments, and mostly you talk about this big emphasis on creating a culture of equality and belonging, which we absolutely love, and we really want to emphasize on it. Now, as we begin this adoption of AI that we're going to be recommending, we want you to take into consideration this human-centric approach, which we'll dive a little bit more deeper into it, as well as these 3 main values that will take form for the ethical analysis, having to do with trust, transparency, and accessibility. So, to give a quick overview before we get into everything, for preliminary recommendations, I've mentioned how much we love your 2025 commitments. Now, The other recommendation that I mentioned previously a little bit was that we want you to adopt AI for scheduling and continue to be that leader within your industry. Lastly, that aspect of human-centric strategy, AI strategy, that will be tailored for people.
And now we're gonna do a little bit of an explanation of Gap Inc. So first, we went back to your dreams, specifically those of your founders, Dawn and Doris Fisher, and their commitment to a fit for all. And so we were really struck by Doris's dream of equality, as at the time, she was a woman in leadership when women really weren't in positions of power. We also want to honor Dawn's commitment to inclusivity, as he was 6'4" and he just really wanted to find a pair of jeans that fit him. You've already started again with your 2025 commitments to a culture of belonging, and we're going to highlight those here. So first, inclusion and belonging. You've adopted the Open to All mindset, which is a nationwide initiative to combat anti-discriminatory practices. Second, your commitment to equality and empowerment. We really commend that you're one of the first Fortune 500 companies to do equal pay for equal work. And lastly, sustainability. You hope to have 100% renewable energy in your stores by 2030. Now, Gap on a global scale, you have 2,562 company-owned stores in 488 franchise-owned stores all across the globe. Across the globe, you have 85,000 employees, with 83% of this 85,000 working in retail.
And so diving into the competitive retail space, we want to really know that within the industry, it is one of the biggest workforces that are put into it. That's about 21%, making it out of the 151 million, that's about 31 million. So it's a pretty big industry. And yet within this massive industry that has this big workforce, we have this general retail turnover rate that's pretty high, as you can see. And if anything, it got even higher when it came to 2022. If we look at the manager, if anything too, it's also pretty high, and it also increased from 2021 to 2022. Now, the other aspect is that recently there was also this statement that you released talking about how you will be closing 350 stores for Gap and Banana Republic. To someone outside of this, they may say, oh, that may not look so good for Gap. Maybe they're not doing that well. We understand that this was a strategic move, and that it's because you are seeing that this is changing. There's a changing of the landscape within the industry. We know that you have seen this happen, and so instead you want to focus on minimizing, focusing on your culture, focusing on within internal before you expand again. Now, this will all be because AI is in the future. As you take this next step within the industry, AI is showing that it improves efficiency, lowers costs, accelerates research and development, and on top of that, it has actually been heavily invested in over the past few years, despite COVID-19. And if anything, the retail and the baking industry is the one that has been investing the most out of all. As Joseph Fuller said, a professor over at Harvard Business School, virtually every big company now has multiple AI systems and counts the deployment of AI as integral to their strategy.
And now we're going to dive into a little bit of scheduling and Gap's past approach. First, on-call scheduling. You all know it. It's in retail. It's in a bunch of industries. And it's kind of the worst. You get that call, you're with your friends, and they're like, we need you right now. So this kind of creates some problems. First, no-shows. It just significantly increases the amount of no-shows because people don't want to come into work when they're told last minute. This kind of creates a negative culture because now you have some resentment. The people who are in the stores are angry at people who didn't come in, and the people who got the call are a little angry that they have to miss out on their plans. And it's just disruptive. It's unpredictable and it has an unpopular reputation. With on-call scheduling, this phenomenon of cloaking has been the employee's worst nightmare. What does this look like, you may ask? You're closing the store at 11 p.m. and they need you back in the store to open at 5 or 6 in the morning. You're not getting any sleep. You're tired, you're exhausted, you're drained. And there's a few examples of employees talking about their experience with cloaking. Not so great.
Yeah, exactly. And so you took notice that, you know what, this isn't really working. And previously, as Sophia mentioned, there has been this aspect of on-call scheduling a lot within the retail industry and other industries in general. And so New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, he was a big advocate of saying, okay, you know what, let's end on-call scheduling. And he sent out letters to various retail stores, retail companies, one of them being Gap, and said, you know what, this isn't working. Laws are changing. There has to be a change. And so you took it like a champ. You said, okay, we hear you. We're gonna take steps to adopt predictive scheduling. And so what happened was that this was sometime in 2016. And so by early 2018, you were already putting in time and energy and money into participating in a stable schedule study having to do it with, okay, well, this was particularly with Shift Messenger, which was kind of saying, okay, well, what will work for our employees? What will work for our company? What do the numbers show? And so what ended up happening was that it all paid off because by late 2018, you were already doing this widespread adoption of Shift for your employees to use.
Now we're gonna dive into some employee perspectives, but let me tell you a little story first. So back in 1929, in the Soviet Union, they decided to essentially kill the weekend and implement a continuous working week. And this looked like getting assigned one day off for the rest of your life. Now, this one day off didn't really correspond with the people you love and care about. So you had your day offs alone. And what kind of time off if you have to spend it all alone?
Right. And it comes as no shock that obviously this doesn't really create a very thriving environment. And so I want to talk about a study that focused on drivers versus survivors within the workspace. Now, this study looked into survivors, the aspect of people that just wanted to come in, get through the day. I'm just here to get paid. I'm here to make money that I need. But what was found was that the comparison between them and thrivers was that thrivers were actually showed more loyalty towards their employer. They performed better. They also had higher retention rates, which is something we're looking at within your industry, something that's pretty high. And then better well-being, that aspect, satisfaction, finances, and health, where they're all satisfied. Very heavily connected with that aspect of the culture of equality and belonging that you're looking for, and our emphasis on flourishing.
Now, here comes Gen Z. They make up about a good portion of the population, and they're between the ages of 12 to 27. Now, what's important to know about Gen Z is that they really care about work-life balance. In fact, 74% would switch a job to one that has a better work-life balance. So why does this matter for you guys? 53% of your employees are between the ages of 20 to 30, so they are in Gen Z. And Gen Z has kind of a lot of values that they care about that differ from other generations. I want to point out empathetic leadership, maybe some recognition in the workplace, but most importantly, flexibility of their schedule. And now that brings us the shift to Shift. Your app Shift allows your employees to request someone to cover their shift. However, you can also take over someone's shift, all within an app. Quite easy to use, and it had some positive impacts. People really liked it, and past and present employees are saying there's good flexibility. But there's a couple things that Shift didn't fix. First, it created unbalanced shifts. Sure, you can pick up someone's shift, but maybe you have less experience. And now you have people on the floor with different levels of experience, and it's just unbalanced and not cohesive. Second, there's just not enough hours. Sure, maybe you can take on some shifts, but if you're only scheduled for 20 hours a week, and this is supposed to be your full-time job, how are you supposed to make a living wage? And third, it's unreliable. Shift doesn't seem to update your shifts, and relying on Shift means you're relying on this technology that might fail you and you have to deal with consequences.
So now I'd like to talk about some of the benefits and challenges of using AI within the workplace, and most importantly, scheduling. So scheduling is arguably one of the most uniquely beneficial usages of AI, as AI itself can handle large amounts of data, and managers can use this in order to make more informed decisions about scheduling. So here are two schedules, one being digitally optimized and one not being digitally optimized. As you can see, there is a lot of unassigned time, as seen with the light blue. And this could lead, there's a lot of unassigned time with the light blue. But with the digitally optimized schedule, there's little unassigned time. That means employees are able to pick up shifts tailored to them. But we also want to highlight some challenges that come with adopting any AI model. Things such as security, bias, privacy and surveillance, explainability, transparency. These are all real challenges you might have to face when incorporating AI within your workforce. So that's why we want to stress, or we want to recommend a human-centric responsible AI model. So a human-centric responsible AI model is that we put humans at the forefront of AI use. AI should be used as a tool, not as a replacement. Any decision backed by AI must have a human component to it. Humans are the forefront, and yeah, humans are the forefront of AI.
Here. All right, now I'd love to delve into some legal considerations as we build the context for, again, our final recommendation. So I'd like to start with Oregon and their predictive scheduling laws, being the first and only state in the US to date with predictive scheduling laws. This ensures that employees have the right to a 14-day scheduling notice, as well as the right to refuse shifts within 10 hours of one another to avoid the dreaded cloak that Sophia mentioned earlier. Now we can take a look at the state, and we can see that the only state with statewide laws is Oregon. We have some states with local laws, such as Washington, California, a little bit east. And we also have some states with prohibitions, which is Iowa, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Georgia. So when looking at this map, we can see that the wave has just begun for these predictive scheduling laws. We want to make sure that we're positioning GAP ahead of that regulatory curve. All right, now I'll dive a little bit into the nitty-gritty with the laws that we've used to build our AI policy. So the EU AI Act was passed and is set to be implemented into the year 2026, which is a comprehensive list of laws that corporations can base their policies off of, as well as to adhere to. The White House has a lot of executive orders in place, such as the AI Bill of Rights, which I'll delve into a little bit more later. And the Algorithmic Accountability Act of 2022 has been introduced to Congress and is currently in conversation. So what I'll say with this, it's important to know that law is coming, and we need to make sure that we're positioned, again, ahead of that curve. All right, and before I conclude on this slide, I also think it's key to mention the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which has created frameworks for AI models, which the AI Bill of Rights is based off of. This is a framework that is going to be the basis of AI law, and I think it's really important to mention that as we're constructing our policy. All right, so a little bit more on the AI Bill of Rights, just to provide some frameworks as we're thinking about AI policy. A pillar is safe and effective systems, algorithmic discrimination protections, data privacy, notice and explanation, as well as human alternatives and consideration fallback. So data privacy in RAI is also kind of an important pillar. It's a risk to AI because it's a new hot topic that poses a lot of risks. So focusing on California a little bit, just because that's where GAP's headquarters are. Comprehensive data privacy law in California, the American Privacy Rights Act, and in the EU, the GDPR, which took effect in 2018, sets restrictions for how data privacy is used, which encompasses the need for transparency as well as disclosing of data breaches, which is another big risk. So how we're kind of positioning ourselves is data privacy law is also on the up and come. So we want to make sure that we're protecting our employees and our patrons and their data, while also making sure that we're ahead of the curve as these regulations come into place. Before I end our legal section, I want to bring up litigation risk. So as it pertains to on-call scheduling had a lot of issues with employees, not well received, not very ethical. So Chipotle and Abercrombie both had severe lawsuits. Chipotle was sued for $150 million, settled for 20. Abercrombie was sued for 20 million, settled for 9.6, and that does not include hefty legal fees of over $1,000 an hour for over a year of work. So we want to make sure right before Mahir gets into the financial section that we keep this in mind as a risk, and also commend GAP for being ahead of the predictive scheduling laws while implementing the shift down. So let's get into legal. You are here.
All right, so now we're talking about the financial estimates, financial considerations. So these are all from the Bloomberg model, and this is for the fiscal year 2025. So as you can see, the implementation of AI would increase your operating expenses by around 1%, or this will be $76 million if memory serves. And this would decrease your pre-tax income by 0.5%, so it'll be 4.5 here. But we also wanted to emphasize the fact that the direct benefits and most importantly the indirect benefits of implementing this AI would outweigh the 1% costs. So for example, direct benefits, there'll be increased efficiencies within the workplace. The employee retention would go up as it would cost more to bring on a new employee rather than to keep an employee. And because of this, the customer service and retention could increase. Furthermore, legal benefits, as Anna mentioned, avoidance of scheduling lawsuits. We don't want to be like Chipotle or Abercrombie. Minimize litigation costs, and like Anna said, also AI is a hot topic right now. So compliance with emerging AI laws. I also want to highlight the indirect benefits, as Gap would be a first mover within AI in retail. So AI is a when, not if in the retail industry, as AI will definitely be a part of retail in the future. 34% of retail companies invest in AI for customer service and the user experience. So Gap can be ahead of the curve. Just under 30% of retail companies have automated services to enhance the customer experience. So Gap will be able to keep up with constant AI innovation. Sorry.
Now we're going to take a last look at your ethical analysis. It's imperative that you recognize that a flourishing mindset goes hand in hand with human-centric adoption of AI. But first, this flourishing mindset means paying attention to your values and really committing to them. So once again, committing to inclusion and belonging, equality and empowerment, and a human-centric approach. Now, of course, we do have to recognize that AI creates some ethical challenges, as we've already brought up, but I really want to emphasize 3 of the main challenges that you're going to face: data privacy, data security, and data bias. Now, in order to mitigate these risks and successfully go over these challenges, we recommend that you pay attention to this ethical heart of a responsible AI policy. Now, what does this look like? It starts with trust. This means that your employees trust that you're going to do the right thing with their data. You're not going to sell it, you're not going to misuse it. And where does this start? With your flourishing culture. Second, transparency. This means that you're clear with your employees about what you are doing with their data and clear about the security. And lastly, accessibility, or really explainability. This means that your AI needs to be able to be used by all levels of the organization, has an easy interface.
Yes, and so now it is time for our main event. We're going to take everything we have talked about and we're now going to talk about how we can employ it, no pun intended. So, all right, we're coming back to this slide that we had in the beginning. And it's this aspect of, okay, we love the fact that you mentioned what you mentioned within your 2025 commitments. Great, we want to hone on that. Next is this recommendation we're giving about adopt AI for scheduling, and continue being a leader. And then the third one being, focus on this human-centric strategy to have people behind it, so it's for people. So what is this going to look like? Well, let's have a little fun. Let's create an outfit. Let's dive into your wardrobe and let's see all these components: the shirt, the jeans, the shoes, and the jacket. How this will all make up the recommendation that we're putting into place to dive a little deeper. So the shirt, the first impression that, for the most part, you get to see. When we begin, similar as to what you did for Shift Messenger, we really recommend that you do this pilot program again for AI scheduling. So you get the chance to really deep dive, do some research, see what's working and what's not, what are the numbers saying, how can we best set this up for the employees as well as for us, and have this educated decision as to the way AI can look like. When I first was told AI before we worked on this proposal, I used to think, it's this technical robot that's just like moving and then typing things out. In reality, AI has been around us for a really long time. The iPhone has AI in it, Apple Watches, AI in it, ChatGPT is AI. It's all around us already. It's being used constantly. Once you adopt the full-on, whatever it may be, just like it was Shift Messenger to Shift, you'll have something similar for AI, and that's when you'll have this really nice swaggy logo to go on your shirt. Okay, so now we're gonna put on our big kid pants, right? So we're gonna say, yes, let's put in place a responsible AI model. This will include the issues that Mihir touched on and Sophia emphasized, that aspect of security, bias, and privacy, all focused on this human-centric model, right? So some examples of how you could do this would be you can do bias auditing. You could also do some security redundancies of those two-factor. You go in, you put your password multiple times. Yes, it can be frustrating, but we ensure that we are being ethical about it. So just big pants on. Now, then you're gonna hit the ground running. You've been a leader, you wanna now advocate. Yes, we're putting into place a responsible AI model focused on a human-centric approach. We recommend everybody does this too. Be ethical. We are gonna, just like we did predictive scheduling, this is what we recommend for AI, both at the industry level and the regulatory arena. Of course, you gotta add that little personal flair, you gotta make it fun, you gotta focus on your employees, right? So you make it easy, you make it accessible for everybody to use. This can take form of, you can continuously communicate and say, okay, we're 2 weeks away from adopting the AI model, we're 1 week away. This is what it will look like. You can offer QR codes, people can open up an infographic so they can see what type of information they can put in place within this program. You can do many, many things to make sure you're communicating and that the transition will be fluid. The other aspect, which is this aspect of making it fun, is that we're calling it respect and celebrate. Respect that there's a world outside of GAP and celebrate the good work that is being done, right? Maybe you have someone who is a mother, but also tries to work full time and has to work and do childcare, right? One of the things may be that she needs time to be at home, time to have some space, right? We want to respect that. We say, okay, yes, do what you need to do. We'll work it out in some way, but also let's celebrate the people that come in and back up those managers, or back up their fellow employees. You can do some form of, we recommend kind of an anonymous note system where you can say, hey, Sophia, you've been doing a really great job. I really appreciated when you backed me up that other day. And so Sophia now, she feels happy. She's like, yes, I'm glad I could do that for you. It's creating empowerment, it's creating purpose, it's creating that flourishing environment. And on top of that, you also have this aspect of someone who's having their space be respected for that mother that's trying to also work childcare. So that outfit structure, right? This is what's included within your wardrobe, those hangers. Now, what do those hangers do? Well, they allow us to put our outfit into a structure so it can be held up and for us to just pick up and go, right? So your culture is your foundation. It's the emphasis, it's what you really want to focus on and what we really want to focus on and where flourishing really comes into play, right? So by focusing on flourishing, we will meet those commitments of equity and belonging. So, of course, times change. Sometimes clothes get worn out. Sometimes you just want a different style. And therefore, you want to refresh your wardrobe. You want to come back and you want to review it. You want to revise it. We recommend that you focus on recommitting, communicating, collaborating, and corroborating on a consistent basis to make sure that you are still staying on top of the regulatory curve or ethical curve. So to do a quick recap, we talked about those first impressions. That's sure. Introducing that pilot program now focused on AI. You're gonna put on your big kid pants. You're gonna make sure we're actually delivering on that responsible AI model. You're gonna hit the ground running with those shoes and advocate for that human-centric RAI. Then you add that little flair, you make it accessible, you make it fun, you add empowerment within your culture. Then you have the hangers, which is the main thing that's included. You focus on continuously, really allowing that culture to flourish that you have. And then finally, you refresh your wardrobe as much as you can. This will all come into play to create this aspect of a fit for all. Because as you say, when you decide that inclusion isn't optional, not only do the gaps between us close, but a whole new world of possibility opens. Thank you. We're now open to questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, team, very much. A second here. Okay, let me, the 4 or 5 of us, I think, right, are going to ask some questions. And so I'd like to ask the first one. that is help us by sort of restating or answering what makes this issue that you've presented an ethical issue.
Certainly, I'd love to take this. So this is an ethical issue because this is about flourishing in the workplace. So our ethical focus here is flourishing. And flourishing means that employees are empowered. They feel like they belong, not that they feel suppressed or that they do not like their workplace. And so this is really all about flourishing. And that starts with your schedule. As we have found that not having the right time off or having your schedule not really align with your needs, that impacts your ability to flourish. And so that is why this is an ethical issue.
Yes, to add to what Sophia was mentioning, I'll dive into a little bit deeper to add on to her for the thriving environment, but also from the perspective of how it's being adapted within the industry, AI in general. It's definitely been seen as, oh, AI is really working in these categories, but there's still underlying worries of, you know what, technology that we haven't necessarily implemented, regulations aren't necessarily up to following up with necessarily how fast our technology is advancing nowadays. And so it becomes this ethical because right now, maybe it's okay, it's not this big of an issue, but immediately if we let it get out of hand, it's gonna become something completely else because we don't know how far we can take it. So from that perspective, that's where it can become a really big problem. From your perspective, you can continue to be that leader, seen as you took a pretty big step when you did predictive scheduling. You can do the same thing for AI and that aspect of creating that thriving environment for your employees, so it doesn't get out of hand the way it could, and then you can maintain not only a good company culture that can continue to be successful, but also just in general have that aspect of good scheduling. As we've seen in the past, has been quite a pressing issue.
Good. Okay, Caitlin.
So you sound very optimistic about this new tool using AI. What do you suggest we do if there is employee backlash? Or that it's determined that there's discriminatory impact or disparate impact on certain groups of employees using this tool?
I can answer this one. So as we said earlier, we were adopting a human-centric model. Can you go back to
Which one?
As we said earlier, we're adopting a human-centric model. So while the AI can help with data collection and make a suggested model, the human aspect would be the manager would still look at the suggested model, make their changes. Say for instance, employee A has one issue and employee B has another issue. They would be able to implement this, or they were able to change the suggested schedule in order to fit the employee's needs better.
Yeah, thank you, Mihir. I'd like to also elaborate that a little bit more. We totally understand your concern about the employee backlash and making sure that we're avoiding biases in this process. We want to also inform you guys that we did have a lot of research into this, and we definitely came up with that idea as we're doing our research. How we're going to combat that specifically is going back to number 6, the 4 C's, revising and reviewing. We don't have the feedback until we are able to receive the feedback. We run those betas. So how we're going to combat that is, again, we're going to review, revise, and then as Mihir said, it's the auditing of the AI. So we do find biases, then it's going in and it's revising. So we're completely understanding of the fact that this could be an issue, but we have, with our comprehensive policy, the steps in place for when and if that happens, we can quickly, swiftly, succinctly deal with that.
Perfect. Okay, Hannah.
Thank you. Have you looked at all at who else is, or is any other industry or especially retail industry doing AI scheduling, and what challenges have they already run into? Or my second part of that is, if there is anyone doing this, is it beneficial more to the employer? It sounds like it's going to cost us an extra 1%, and I wasn't sure. Is it to help make our schedule more efficient, to make it quicker for our manager to do, or is it more helpful for the employees to just have schedules they like more and Flourish? That wasn't clear to me. So one, who's doing this AI scheduling, and two, sort of who is it helping the most?
Of course, I'd love to tackle that question, and feel free to jump in, guys, if I miss anything, to make sure we give you a comprehensive answer. So totally understand the issue there. So as Mihir mentioned in our financial analysis, it will kind of cut into our budget. But as we also mentioned, the litigation costs are quite hefty. So I think being a first mover in that case, I know the restaurant industry is big into this scheduling with AI. The retail industry is a little bit slower to move just because the Shift app has kind of taken over. So it's that second wave again, as we see it in very recent years. In the past 5 years, the law, predictive scheduling laws have just been introduced. And I think we're going to be a first mover in that case, which gives us a competitive advantage. And again, with the question that you asked, which pertains to whether this is benefiting the employees versus the company as a whole, the answer is both. So when we look at it, it's more equitable for the employees to make sure that they're getting as close to the time that they want to work, they can work, or dropping schedules, making sure that that aspect of the employee is more efficient, while also reducing those costs. Maybe it's less time the managers need to spend doing that with that tool that they're able to use, while also making sure it's optimized for both aspects. So the AI would definitely be taking into play employee considerations for that ethical flourishing, while also making sure that GAP as a whole is benefiting from this. Definitely go hand in hand there.
And furthermore, these are just ballpark estimates. So with a financial team, these the 1% cost could be like much less. It could be around 50 million or so on and so forth.
Yes, the last thing that I wanted to note was, so outside of being a consultant during moments like this, I also work at the Chief's Career Office over at Eisner. And one of the things that recently came up was how long it took to schedule multiple students throughout different jobs so they can all do one. It takes a massive amount of manpower and a massive amount of time. AI will essentially truly shrink that. And as we mentioned, it's this aspect of not having it replaced, just using it as a tool. So apart from like the finances, and as Anna really eloquently explained most of it, that ultimately the AI is really here to be for you and for your employees.
Maria?
Yeah, so I was wondering, you mentioned that we should start with a pilot program, right? We've got to figure out what market that is, whatever. But from a communication standpoint to our employees, to our managers, you mentioned that we need to put together some type of plan. And can you elaborate a little bit more on what that plan looks like? Is it one directional? Is it two directional? How are we going to get? And have you considered any potential employees' concerns, what the specific concerns might be, and how we can overcome those?
Yes, some specific concerns, to jump in really quick, would be that ultimately AI is maybe right now not as trusted as much. People sometimes perceive it the way I at first perceived it, where it's like this robot on the backside, and so sometimes it gets lost that, we're already diving into AI. And we're seeing this right now also with like how fast the whole technology is advancing with the metaverse and stuff like that. People just feel like, oh, okay, we're going really far, really, really fast. And that's something that I may not be comfortable with, because at the end of the day, yes, the workforce for employees may be mostly Gen Z right now, but that still doesn't take away from employees that may be older, that may also just be like, you know what, like I like the way we do it now, like why can't we just stick with it? So that could be some employee concerns that we see. Now, I want to combat that aspect of the concerns with the other question at the beginning that you mentioned. So you mentioned the aspect of communicating, which I believe was this aspect of right here, making it accessible and fun. Ways that you can communicate, I think when you first begin, you can definitely have it be one way. So kind of say, okay, you know what, we really do think we've done our research for first impressions. We've done our research. We think this will be the best model for you. Trust us as our employees. we'll set it into place, we'll put it into place, this is what we're gonna do. The communication aspect of how detailed and yet concise you can get will be good to be able to create that trust with your employees to say, okay, we can take that next step with you. So that aspect of communication, maybe sending out this plan of this is how the AI will probably be adopted in a time frame manner. We'll give updates as the time frame progresses. And on the other aspect, so that would be the one way, right? Of course, relationship is a two-way street. So we can't take that away. That is where the aspect of refreshing your wardrobe creates that two-way communication street. First, we implement it. Then we definitely open up our ears to listen to what our employees are wanting to hear. Well, not wanting to hear, but what are our employees wanting to say? How are they feeling? Is this working? Is this not working? What is working? Is it better? Is it not better? So that is where that two-way street can come in after your one-way street.
How are we gonna listen to, tens of thousands of employees?
I would love to take that one really quick, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, yeah, so I think it's the feedback loops, so we said that we're not exactly taking in that feedback as we introduce our pilot program, but as a part of the 3 Cs, we're gonna take in those responses. Maybe we do, it's all data, it's a survey, it's true or false, you like this, it's, would you say that you enjoyed, made your experience easier in scheduling? Yes, no, kind of, somewhat, maybe neutral, and then we take that aggregate data to then employ it in our revision if necessary.
You can do a survey. You can also form a committee of your employees that can take and be advocates for their fellow employees as well. How they're selected could be, employees that are performing really well, we're gonna invite you to join this committee. You could also have it be a voting system. Ultimately, what this will do is, well, one, it's gonna empower your employees. It's gonna say, you know what, like, take a stepping stone here, so you can also have us have a committee where you can actually speak. So that will be a great way for you to show that empowerment, that equality and belonging, that flourishing ethical framework that we're recommending will be really, really key. So you can do a combination of the survey, the committee, and then as you can see, maybe once you have the committee, new suggestions come up of what employees want, and then that way you can see, okay, what can we manage and what can we change?
I also just want to add briefly that this is not the first time that you've changed your scheduling model. You started with on-call and you went to shift. This would be a good time to review and see, how did we do that process? How did we go from on-call to shift? How did we introduce shift? What was received well? What was not received well? And this creates a new time to make change and maybe revise your approach.
Exactly.
So we're going to go Rachel, then Caitlin, then Hannah, then Rachel again. Rachel?
All right, thank you, team, very much for your presentation, especially in this day and age. Everybody in the industry is scrambling to see how we can apply AI. Data breaches, and actually, when Maria asked a question about how do we understand that might be a really good use of AI, but that wasn't what you proposed, and I'm just joking a little bit with that. But seriously, data breaches are top of mind for us when we consider adopting any new technology. How do we ensure that employees are protected, especially when sensitive data may be an input to the model?
Yeah, I think for the sake of time during our presentation, we decided to move some slides to our annex where we have a robust amount of information regarding that, because that is a very pressing issue that we're definitely thinking about and encompassed in our AI policy. So in adherence to new laws in regards to data privacy, combating data breaches and cyber attacks, part of that is that two-factor authentication and redundancies in place, but it's also that aspect of being proactive and making sure that during the process, people are attentive, and we need to be transparent with our employees and how we're using their data, and I think it's also another aspect of that those redundancies that would help combat that. Exactly, if anyone else wants to elaborate.
I also like to add on, adopting a zero trust model would also work as well, as administrators would have to log in, do all the login info. There would be no password saving or nothing. It would just be a zero trust model, stuff like that. That's already implemented in multiple.
Exactly, and we've seen that before, in that it protects people's data and making sure that we're the most equitable with the data that we have, as well as
meeting needs of all of our stakeholders there. Exactly, so.
Caitlin?
How do you propose that we explain this AI to our employees in a way that's understandable? Because it's quite a variety of levels of education and we want to make sure we meet people where they are. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really like that question. I think Sophia was really touching on it as to going back and kind of using when you shifted from Shift Messenger to Shift as kind of like a guideline. Of course, it's not the same thing because it was more app-wise versus the aspect of AI. But I think for AI, what would be a really great way would be to show, well, an infographic will sometimes be really, really good. Images is just something that will really connect with people. And on average, within the US, people can read an average of 7th grade level. So you can focus on making sure that when you create that infographic, you make it very as simple and concise as you can. As I mentioned before, the images will probably just help get the message across. And then the timeline will be really helpful for people to just see, okay, this is when we're gonna begin the process. You could also hold meetings, or if you wanna actually create the committee first, as part of like one of the policy, the pilot program, you can. And then that way you can get input on how people think that AI could be introduced, what questions they have. And then once you know the questions, you can figure out, okay, how can we best answer them?
I'll also add modules are very important. I think across all industries, including retail spaces and restaurant spaces, mandatory modules maybe once a month to bring everyone up to speed in a way that adheres to varying technological literacies. Best way.
Hannah?
Thank you. I have a question about something you mentioned earlier. You said there was a problem with shift and having maybe more experienced employees in slots, you know, where maybe you wanted experienced employees, then they were maybe a little more inexperienced. Looking at possible reasonable accommodations for something like a religious holiday, balanced with preferences, like you mentioned, a mom maybe needing to get childcare, and some of the things maybe we need to do under the law, and then things we might want to do for scheduling. How are you gonna address those ethical concerns of who wins when the AI tool sees those conflicts? This person has a religious holiday, this person wants a weekend off, and then also making sure the right level of experience is on the shift.
This is where our human-centric approach really comes into play, because with those concerns that you mentioned, they're very, very valid. We took this into consideration because it's true, you know, this problem happens even within the Shift app. So when that gets overlapped, what's really cool about AI is that now you can input so much information that it goes through it and it already, let's say, puts it in a calendar, right? So with that, you can show that that is the religious holiday that you have. And if you can see that someone who wants to have that religious holiday off is being put onto that schedule that day, that human-centric component, having someone in the back who is looking at it and saying, okay, well, this is what AI did, but based on the information, there's a slight bias or maybe there's a slight miscalculation. I recognize that this is important to this person. As a person, I empathize. So I'm gonna actually swap these two if I can, some form of communication loop where you can notify that this will be okay and it will be swapped and life will be okay. As we mentioned again, of course, this will take time to get right. So continuously refreshing your wardrobe is important.
Can I also jump into this? Also, fundamentally, AI will learn. As well as humans learning, AI will also learn through the data like collected, and this will create a positive feedback loop. As AI would learn more and more, the data and the patterns would be recognized further and more conclusively.
And Rachel, we have 2 minutes left.
All right, thanks, Tim. I'll do a real quick one. What quantitative improvement does your team expect with the switch to AI? In other words, how are we going to know that it's working?
What's that?
Would you mind repeating that last portion you cut out a bit?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll repeat the entire thing just for clarity. What quantitative improvement, for example, in turnover, does your team expect with the switch to AI? In other words, how are we going to know that it's working?
That's a really good point. That's gonna come back to the refreshing of a wardrobe, and time will also tell. We do expect that what will really come into play for the retention and improving that retention rate will come in from probably two main factors. That aspect of focusing on your culture, focusing on flourishing, that aspect of empowerment, creating this workplace that people wanna come back to, people recognizing, you know what, I really love working here because they take into consideration that I'm a working mom, it's really, really hard, and they respect that. The other aspect is also, so it was the flourishing, and then it is the aspect of the AI scheduling. So the AI scheduling will, in general, probably set it all up to where people, one, have a predicted schedule, know when they need to come in, can trust that this will be something that continues throughout however long they want to work for, and that they can constantly stay and trust the company, therefore expanding the loyalty there. So the likelihood of them staying will be good. And on top of that, if anything, the relationship, because employees can sometimes be your own customers, the relationship can really, really connect and have someone really love the company for a really, really long time. So they continuously come back as a customer as well.
Exactly, and although we don't have back of the envelope calculations on what our projected benefit will be, just because there's kind of a lot of moving pieces, you know, and it all is gonna kind of come down to our 4 Cs. But one thing I wanna mention before we wrap up this question is that employee turnover is expensive. It's expensive, and I think that adopting our AI model with scheduling is gonna save on those costs. It is also gonna make the manager's time more efficient. To get into the nitty-gritty, efficiency is overall improved, therefore we can kind of cut the fat and keep going in the direction the gap needs to be going.
Exactly. Managers are employees for you as well. So making sure that managers are happy, because when we talked about the general turnover rate, we also talked about the manager turnover rate. Managers will be happier. You know what? My life will be easier. I won't have to constantly be worrying about people that don't show up. I don't have to constantly be worried about my team that's set up to where I have one person that maybe doesn't bring their all, and one person who, like, maybe multiple people that don't bring their all, and just one person, versus a more balanced team that they can now trust. So that also helps out a lot.
Data that we've seen has suggested this will be a really widely applicable system that will benefit both employees as well as the business, fiscally, legally, and ethically. I want to add one last thing. The retail industry is extremely competitive. Your differentiator is going to be customer service, and that is seen through your happy employees with their flourishing and good schedules. And so that, if your increased revenue, is where you're going to see this quantitative difference.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can now breathe. We're all set. You can go back to being undergraduate students. And Caitlin is going to kick us off. We are limited to no more than 2 minutes per judge for feedback, so go.
So I am blown away at how engaging your presentation was.
How what?
How engaging their presentation was, like just the how you interacted and movements and just everything was just amazing. Like I'm stunned, and I would think you've been working for 10 years in corporate world, like at the level you're at. So honestly, kudos to you. So I attended UMass Amherst. I did not go to Eisenberg, but what they said about the Eisenberg kids is quite true. I was in a different major. So I was really impressed at your coverage of the concerns around AI, and especially data privacy. That's an area that's really my specialty, what I work in every day, and you really hit, like, you didn't just hit at surface level, you really hit so many issues about staying ahead of the curve and not just meeting the legal requirements, but also being ethical about it, and not just doing the bare minimum, doing what is the right thing for the employees, and keeping mindful of that as things evolve over time, because as we all know, and you probably saw as you were researching this, the issues with AI, yes, we are aware of some of them, but they're still kind of being worked out over time. We don't know exactly where this will take us. So I just want to close out, and if I could hire you today, I would honestly, please, like, amazing.
Hannah.
I absolutely agree. I worked for Deloitte for a while, I have a consulting background, and your presentation, that was not just the formatting, but the material you used, the level of information in each, very engaging and clearly well practiced. You had some good transitions as a team. presenting, and so I really appreciated that. Great communication, and I agree with my colleague there. Good job on the presentation skills and the information you provided. Because I'm an attorney, I'm just going to focus on the legal section for a moment and just say that was very well done. I've seen this competition before, and it's a hard area to do. I know your focus is supposed to be ethics, and you took it on very well. I think it was great. You had a couple really good examples, especially with Chipotle, of the litigation risks to the company to bring up as some of the concerns about, you know, that idea of predictive scheduling, and you hit the law really well. Showing like, here's how it is now on that map. I think that was really good to see, and sort of saying this will help you stay ahead of the curve. So that was great. I think you hit a lot of the good areas in terms of some of the ethical issues, as well as we see a lot of breaches occurring, and just kind of how to deal with that privacy and the data information. There's a lot going on with AI, and especially how do we protect people's information. And so I know it's hard to cover all of that in the short presentation. You did a good job highlighting some of the particular issues. One of the things that I would have just loved to see, you mentioned it when as a follow-up to one of my questions, you said some of the restaurant industry is using AI scheduling. It just would have been nice to see that sort of benchmark from a couple companies of like, here's what some major players are doing and how it's going well. And even if it's not in the retail space, Gap can be an innovator, but you know, here's how it's helped, you know, if it might be McDonald's, whoever is using it, that would have really been powerful, as like a sort of a proof, that it might work well for Gap as well. But
Of
great
course,
job.
thank you.
Caitlin, Rachel, Caitlin, and Hannah honored the 2-minute limit, so now it's your turn.
All right, so y'all made it look really easy, and there are a couple of things that I didn't quite hear in the presentation that I really needed to hear. Health and well-being of employees is a critical area, and we're talking about using AI. We need to ensure that there's absolutely no bias, right, in the scheduling itself. And I think that could be expanded on a little bit, because, you know, you talked about transparency, and when we think about AI, we think about this black box, okay? This ambiguous black box. We have no idea what's going on inside of it. Yet we know that we're going to have sensitive information input into the black box, right? Because if somebody needs to request for a religious holiday, if somebody needs to request because they're sick, there's definitely going to be sensitive information stored in this black box. And that's like a huge issue. So there can't be any bias in the model, right? In terms of health of a religion or in terms of any of these things. There also can't be any risk at all for somebody else getting their hands on any sensitive information. And I think that that's a serious issue when we think about using scheduling, using AI for scheduling, using AI for some of these business operations that actually do have sensitive information that otherwise people wouldn't know about. Because if you think about it, the old school way, pick up the phone, hey, I'm sick, I need a mental day, right? And your boss understands, your manager understands and says, okay, well, let's see how we can shift things around, as opposed to like putting this into some kind of database, for lack of a better word, that is vulnerable to other people seeing. And I think that if y'all can really highlight how it is you're addressing that and how you've considered that, it'll add a lot of value to your solution. It'll make it more compelling. And again, y'all made it look easy, right? You got up there, you presented, you gave us this framework of how to think about it that's relevant to clothing. So kudos for that. And thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Maria.
Yeah, I thought you were very professional, very well spoken. You came across as an extremely cohesive team, and the way that you interacted with each other. You did an excellent job interacting with us as a pretend board. I thought your slides were some of the best that I've seen. I really liked that you used imagery from, I assume it was from Gap.
Yeah.
It looks like Gap, it looks like Gap advertising. That you used that I thought was brilliant, because subconsciously, as a board of directors, I'm gonna like to see that, right? I liked the closed model, you know, at the end. I think for some industries, if you had come into BAE Systems and aerospace and defense and tried to take apart an F-35, the engineers on our board of directors would have been like, what the heck are these people? But Gap is a different type of company, so really understanding the company that you're coming into and the type of communication and sales pitch, for lack of a better word, that is going to work with that particular company, I think is a great lesson for you to learn as you know, if you're going to be doing this in the future. And I think you really hit the mark with your physical presentation. I didn't, one of the things I also really liked is that you tied it so well to the cultural aspects of Gap or aspirations of Gap, right? The inclusivity and the flourishing and our mission statement, so to speak. I like that you continuously tied it back to that. Yes, I don't know that I really have any constructive feedback. I think what my other colleagues have said about, you know, the data breaches, getting over people's initial fear of AI, making sure there's not bias in the system. I think all those things that they brought up are really important. Maybe for your 10 minutes, kind of taking some of that feedback and thinking how to really hone that presentation. But great job. You all are wonderful.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna have to race through because we're low on time. Overall, great job. Totally sucks that in the first 10 seconds you mispronounced the CEO's last name.
I know, and I pronounced it right when I said it first.
I know.
That threw me off.
Great to start with the mission and the values, in the same spirit of what Maria just said, that we're proud of those mission and values. So when you start for that, because when we know we're going to be hearing about ethics, it scares us that you're going to talk about abstract things that we don't agree with. So what a great way to get us over that fear by, you know, help rooting your definition of right and wrong in our mission and values. Great that you talked about stakeholders. Great that you started with an agenda. Double great that you referenced 2025 commitments. So the board always wants to know that you're on top of the most current things that are happening so that what you're saying is relevant. It sucks if we mentally shut you off because your presentation left out something that had to be there. Are you Paulette?
Yes.
Try hard, even though it's bad that we're sitting so far apart, try hard not to stand in front of a screen that has words on it where I'm trying to read the words, but your body is blocking me, which is hard because we're taking up about half the room. It's great the way that the other three people, when the speaker is speaking, the other three people, it matters what you're doing. And you're supposed to have this perfect balance of looking at the speaker and caring about that and looking at us to see if what's being said is working. There was an early slide that I think said 988, but someone said 488. So if I heard that wrong, it's just because I'm a bad person. When Paulette, when you turn, your voice goes, I can't hear your voice because you're not facing me. So obviously, like, we're lucky that Sophia and Hannah have bold voices, and your voice is okay, but because it's just at the limit, you need to make sure that if you have to look at the screen, which is okay, you gotta make the effort to go up a little bit. Loved the reference to the study, but you need to put a citation at the bottom of the slide that tells me whose study it is.
Okay.
Okay.
I will move from the appendix in the future.
Somebody said you guys, and the problem is we've now had to criticize every team so far today. Old people don't use the phrase you guys in a professional setting like this. I agree with Hannah that you had a great acknowledgement of the legal stuff. When you mention the NIST, you should tell the audience that they are responsible for ISO standards in the United States.
Okay.
It helps us know the importance of it. I liked the clothing metaphor like Maria did. It was risky, but it worked. So it's good to take risks. Your recap slide had inconsistent punctuation. Good that you used the slides in the answer, Mahir and Anna. There was moments in your answers to our questions when you referred back to slides, very good. And very good, I think, when Anna said, as Mahir said. So it's awesome for us to think that you are a consistent team if there are moments that naturally allow you to reinforce what one of your teammates said earlier. It's a good feeling. Anna, you need to find a different way to get Paulette's permission to say, can I also answer?
Yeah.
We're ready to go. Bring them in. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
You know, you're going back to the. Yeah, right, yeah. Awesome, thank you.